Chapter 361. Xiahou Wujiang's provocation caused Teacherson, who had been tempted, to hesitate again. Chu Xiu looked coldly at Xiahou Wujiang, a cold light and murderous intent in his eyes. Compared to the time at the God Weapon Conference, the present Xiahou Wujiang had grown a lot. At least, he was much more brilliant than when he had incited that mob to kill him. At that time, Xiahou Wujiang was just a clown with a good background and talent, a hedonistic son of a rich family. He would not amount to anything. Just from the fact that he had offended Mo Tianlin, a descendant of one of the 9 great clans, for a woman, it could be seen that his actions were arrogant and childish. But now, Xiahou Wujiang was enough to become Chu Xiu's enemy, and he had to take him seriously. Chu Xiu looked at Teacherson in front of him and said coolly, "Elderson, there is only one chance to enter the Tower of Babel. Do you want to return empty-handed? According to what I know, although you are an elder of the Ba Mountain Sword sect, the qualifications of an elder of the Ba Mountain Sword sect are very lax. As long as you have reached the unity of heaven and are over 50 years of age, you can be granted the qualifications of an elder. So this treatment is different from the elders of other sections. Obtaining the opportunity of the Tower of Babel this time will at least be comparable to the resources that the sect has given you for many years." Chu Xiu's words moved Teacher Cien. Although his title as an elder of the Ba Mountain Sword sect was quite grand, in reality, it was not that valuable. The elders of other sects were the kind of senior martial artists of virtue and prestige, the mainstay of the sect. But the Ba Mountain Sword sect did not have so many requirements. As long as one's strength and age were sufficient, they could be made an elder, and the treatment was not very high. So Teacherson placed great importance on the opportunity of the Tower of Babel this time. Did he want fame or profit? Teacherson was very conflicted. But at this time, Xiahou Wujiang suddenly said loudly, "Elderson, the Xiahou family does not want the things in the Tower of Babel this time. They all belong to you. As long as you can join hands with my 7th uncle to kill Chu Xiu, my Xiahou family will immediately let go of the Skysplit Tower contest." As soon as these words came out, everyone present was stunned. No one thought that Xiahou Wujiang's killing intent towards Chu Xiu was so great that he actually gave up the treasures in the sky-reaching tower for it. In fact, although Xiahou Wujiang wanted the treasures in the sky-reaching tower, he didn't value them as much as Teacherson did. He was the most outstanding disciple of the Xiahou clan's younger generation, and his father was the Xiahou clan patriarch. Most of the Xiahou clan's resources were inclined toward him. Although the Xiahou clan wouldn't give all of its resources to Xiahou Wujiang alone, Xiahou Wujiang alone could occupy more than half of the clan's younger generation. Moreover, the uniqueness of the Xiahou clan's spirit control technique also prevented 90% of the Xiahou clan's disciples from being distracted to cultivate other techniques. So even if Xiahou Wujiang obtained the techniques in the sky-reaching tower, he wouldn't necessarily cultivate them. Instead, he would hand them over to the clan in exchange for other rewards. Using these things that he could give up at any time to exchange for Chu Xiu's life, in Xiahou Wujiang's opinion, this transaction was very worth it. Hearing Xiahou Wujiang's words, the balance in Teacherson's heart immediately began to tilt. With a long sword in hand, he stood together with his 7th uncle. Killing Chu Xiu and taking revenge was secondary. The most important thing was that the Xiahou clan didn't want the treasures in the sky-reaching tower, and Chu Xiu had been killed by them together. The Yunu Palace didn't have an expert at the unity of heaven and man realm, and those unaffiliated martial artists were nothing to worry about. In this way, wouldn't all the treasures in the sky-reaching tower belong to him? Was there even a need to choose such a simple question? A cold glint flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He looked at Teacherson and said indifferently, "Elderson, the enmity between us has already been put down, but now you're picking it up again. In a while, you'll realize that this was a very wrong decision." Teacherson said indifferently, "Chu Xiu, you killed my disciple. How can I let go of such a huge enmity so easily? The grudges of the martial world should be settled in the martial world. If you don't die today, the enmity between us will be considered settled. The corners of Chu Xiu's mouth curled into a sinister smile. If I don't die today, the one who will die will be you. For some reason, when Tichertsen heard the killing intent in Chu Xiu's tone, he felt a chill in his heart. However, he then sneered, arrogant. He could be considered a veteran of the martial world. How could he be frightened by a junior like Chu Xiu today? What a joke. Seventh uncle, who was at the side, took out an arrow and knocked it on his giant bow. He said coldly, enough, don't talk nonsense with them. Quickly finish them off. As soon as he finished speaking, seventh uncle's arrow had already left the bow. Its speed was extremely fast, like a bolt of lightning. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived in front of Chu Xiu. The speed of the arrow was so fast that even if Chu Xiu erupted with the power of the internal binding seal, he still wouldn't be able to dodge it. Most importantly, it was useless for him to dodge it. The moment seventh uncle's soul-stealing arrow left the bow, Chu Xiu felt as if his soul had been locked onto. No matter where he fled to, the arrow would relentlessly pursue Chu Xiu. Therefore, Chu Xiu could only resist it head-on. The demonic saber was unsheathed, and the eerie demonic energy and blood energy combined. A powerful force suddenly erupted. The Avicii demonic saber slashed 3 times in a row. The first slash had already collapsed when it came into contact with the earth energy on the arrow. Although the second slash had successfully torn apart the earth energy, the saber light had already shattered. It was not until the third slash that Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance collided with seventh uncle's arrow. Suddenly, an earth-shattering explosion was heard. The arrow shattered, and Chu Xiu's figure also took 3 steps back. Even his arm was a little numb. Staring at seventh uncle, Chu Xiu frowned. Seventh uncle was definitely the strongest among the unity of heaven and man martial artists he had encountered. He was second only to the Heavenly Sin branch leader and phaseless demon sects Mr. Lu, who were close to the martial Dao grandmaster level. Moreover, seventh uncle's 13 soul-stealing arrows were simply astonishing. He had only cultivated these 13 arrows his entire life, and this cultivation method was extremely extreme. However, each arrow represented the condensation of his entire body's strength. There were probably only a few people in the same realm who could completely block all 13 of his arrows. Just thinking about it made Chu Xiu feel that it would be troublesome to fight against such an enemy. At this moment, seventh uncle's surprise was no less than Chu Xiu's. He knew how powerful his 13 soul-stealing arrows were. Previously, when Lu Fengxian was able to block his arrow, it had already surprised seventh uncle. Now, Chu Xiu was also able to block his arrow so easily. Where did all these young talents come from? Even seventh uncle himself had to admit that even Xiahou Wujiang was inferior to Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian. After seventh uncle attacked, Tichertsen no longer hesitated. The sword in his hand flashed with green and purple lightning, and he charged straight at Chu Xiu. However, Lu Fengxian, who was standing beside Chu Xiu, took the initiative to attack first. The halberd in his hand erupted with crimson moon divine light, and the halberd smashed down with great force. As he brandished it, he was like a demonic god, incomparably violent and ferocious. It formed a great contrast with his handsome appearance and gentle personality, and he was actually equally matched with Teacher Cian. At the same time, Mo Tianlin and the others were fighting with Xiahou Wujiang and the other Ba Mountain Sword sect disciples. The entire scene could be said to be extremely chaotic. On the side of the Yunu Palace, Wan said eagerly, "Senior sister, right now, everyone is attacking Chu Xiu. Why don't we also interfere?" Yan Fian frowned. "No, I already promised that Lu Fengxian. The grievances between the Yunu Palace and Chu Xiu are settled. If I go back on my word, what will happen to the reputation of the Yunu Palace? I know that you were angry at Chu Xiu for crushing your sword, but you need to change your temper and personality. The Yu Palace is no longer the Yu Palace of the past. Before, it was fine for you to do this, but now, not everyone in the Jianghu will give the Yu Palace face. They can fight their own battles. We will fight for the secret boxes in the armory. When we return to the Yu Palace, I will have someone make you another one. Hearing Yan Fian say this, Wan could only purse her lips and nod. Among the young disciples of the Yu Palace, Yan Fian's prestige was very high, even higher than some of the teachers of the Yu Palace. Of course, this was not just because of her strength, but because she truly cared for her junior apprentice sisters. She did not show any favoritism or form cliques. In the eyes of some of the teachers of the Yu Palace, Yan Fian was almost the successor to the next palace master of the Yu Palace. But it would not be easy for the Yu Palace to fight for the treasures in the armory. The independent martial artists and some martial artists from small sects were weak, but they had the advantage in numbers. There was also Yin Luohua, who was slightly weaker, but was a true unity of the world martial artist. Even though Yan Fian's strength was astounding, and the other martial artists of the Yu Palace were not weak, they could not easily take the treasures in the armory. The two sides were in another chaotic battle. And at this time, Seventh Uncle picked up another arrow. Stellar energy circulated, spiraling around the arrow like a storm. Seventh Uncle's 13 soul-stealing arrows only had 13 arrows. Previously, Lu Fengxian had blocked 1 arrow, and Chu Xiu had blocked 1 arrow. Against Teacher Tsun, Seventh Uncle had only used 3 arrows to completely suppress Teacher Cien. There were still 8 arrows left. Even if these 8 arrows could not kill Chu Xiu, they would definitely seriously injure Chu Xiu. A seriously injured Chu Xiu was nothing to worry about. Focusing, Seventh Uncle's eyes suddenly burst with a bright divine light. It was like a small sun, giving people a dazzling feeling. The arrow left the bowstring, and the storm that lingered around the arrow grew larger and larger under the entanglement of the power of heaven and earth. By the time it reached in front of Chu Xiu, it had already turned into a storm tornado that was more than 30 meters wide. Its power was simply terrifying. Chu Xiu did not retreat, but advanced instead. His hand formed a wisdom fist seal, and the stellar energy domain spread out, causing the storm to become extremely slow. It was slowly sliced apart by Chu Xiu's saber force, and finally, the arrow was cut down. However, before Chu Xiu could even catch his breath, another sonic boom sounded. The second arrow had already arrived in front of Chu Xiu. Chapter 362. Seventh Uncle's arrows were unsheathed, and he only had 8 arrows left. As long as these 8 arrows could severely injure Chu Xiu, he wouldn't be able to walk out of the Tongtian Tower. The first arrow had just been blocked by Chu Xiu's wisdom fist seal, but the second arrow had already arrived in front of him. If the first arrow's storm was a violent force, then the second arrow's sharpness was unparalleled. As the arrow approached him, Chu Xiu could already feel the strong pressure coming towards him. The sharp, bone-piercing force seemed to be able to pierce through Chu Xiu. With a loud shout, Chu Xiu directly formed the great SwordWill seal and blasted it forward. His hands formed seals, and one seal after another landed. In the blink of an eye, he had actually blasted out more than 10 great SwordWill seals. Every style of the fast and slow 9 words formula consumed a lot of inner energy. As the first seal that Chu Xiu had mastered, the great SwordWill seal was not weak. However, compared to other seal techniques, its consumption of inner energy was considered low. Therefore, this martial art technique was also used by Chu Xiu with exceptional proficiency. However, now that Chu Xiu had blasted out more than 10 seal techniques in the blink of an eye, it consumed an abnormally large amount of inner energy for Chu Xiu. In the end, the arrow was forcefully shattered by Chu Xiu, but a trace of blood seeped out from the webbing between his thumb and index finger. Even his arms were trembling slightly. Looking at Seventh Uncle, Chu Xiu frowned. This was only the second arrow, and seventh uncle still had 6 arrows left. It was unknown whether he could completely block this arrow. If this continued, he would be exhausted to death by seventh uncle sooner or later. Therefore, after blocking the arrow, Chu Xiu immediately formed the inner binding seal. His figure instantly turned into an afterimage as he rushed towards seventh uncle. Right now, Chu Xiu only had one chance, and that was to engage in close combat with his seventh uncle. Seventh uncle's martial arts were all in his bow and arrow. Even if he did not use the 13 soul-stealing arrows, he would directly use his internal strength aura chi to transform into invisible arrows to attack. As for the other martial arts, Chu Xiu had never seen seventh uncle use them. Moreover, it didn't matter even if he knew how to do it. Chu Xiu didn't believe that after his seventh uncle had cultivated the 13 soul-stealing arrows to this level, his other martial arts would also be so terrifying. Seventh uncle's lips curled into a sneer as he watched Chu Xiu's figure rush over. There were very few martial artists in the Jianghu who used bows and arrows as their weapons. It could even be said that they were rare. This was because this kind of weapon was too extreme, so extreme that it was invincible from afar. However, once it was in close combat, it would be instantly killed. Seventh uncle had been specializing in his 13 soul-stealing arrows since he was in the innate realm. He had been able to practice from the innate realm until now, and had experienced countless fierce battles without dying. Seventh uncle naturally had his own foundation. Other people would practice other fist and leg martial arts to enhance their close combat strength, but seventh uncle was different. He went to the extreme and practiced his own 13 soul-stealing arrows. It was actually very simple to prevent the enemy from getting close. As long as he shot the enemy halfway, he would not give the enemy any chance to get close. At the moment when Chu Xiu's figure rushed over, seventh uncle suddenly grabbed 3 arrows and put them on his giant bow. The 3 arrows were surrounded by 3 different forces. One of them was surrounded by thunder, one was surrounded by cold air, and there were icicles condensing around it. The last one was as hot as fire, and even the surrounding chi of heaven and earth was burning. 3 arrows in one bow, soul-stealing arrows. Everyone could only hear a thunderous explosion. A powerful aura immediately surrounded the entire arsenal, causing everyone to look in the direction where seventh uncle and Chu Xiu were fighting. The 3 arrows were green, blue, and red in color. They were like 3 meteors as they smashed towards Chu Xiu. The powerful aura they exuded caused everyone's expression to change. Even Teachertsen was no exception. Previously, when seventh uncle and Teachertsen were fighting, although he was suppressing Teachertsen, seventh uncle did not have the intention to kill Teacher Cien. After all, it was just an ordinary fight for treasures. The Xiahou clan did not have any enmity with the Ba Mountain Sword sect. It was fine to defeat the other party, but there was no need to kill him. Moreover, danger was everywhere in the sky-reaching tower. Seventh uncle could not possibly use all his 13 soul-stealing arrows on Teacher Cien. Now that seventh uncle had shot out 3 arrows simultaneously, Teachertsen felt that even he was not 100% confident that he could withstand the might of the arrows. And right now, facing seventh uncle's 3 arrows, the pressure on Chu Xiu was even greater. These 3 arrows seemed to have sealed off all the space around Chu Xiu to dodge. Although there were only 3 arrows, they gave off a feeling of despair as if they were an inescapable net. In that instant, a bloody mist erupted around Chu Xiu. He burned his essence blood, and his hand formed the Dugu seal. His stellar energy formed a shield, and he was as immovable as a mountain. Boundless power of blood seeped into the stellar energy shield, causing Chu Xiu's body to be shrouded in a boundless bloody color. The 3 arrows with different powers shot towards Chu Xiu's Dugu seal. The power that exploded in that instant caused the entire arsenal to tremble. Chu Xiu's figure was forced back by the 3 arrows. With each step, his footsteps were deeply imprinted on the ground, leaving footprints and cracks more than a foot deep. After taking more than 10 steps back, the dugu seal in front of Chu Xiu finally shattered. However, the 3 arrows had also exhausted their power and fell to the ground. However, at that moment, Chu Xiu suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned deathly pale. Chu Xiu's dugu seal was mainly a defensive secret technique that could withstand stellar energy. However, it might not be able to withstand the violent fluctuations of stellar energy when they exchanged blows. Under 7th Uncle's 3 arrows, Chu Xiu's internal organs were injured, and he was directly injured by the shock. The power of this strike was so great that the power of the 3 arrows was condensed into a single point. Even Chu Xiu had never seen this from the Heavenly Sin Branch Lord or Mr. Liu. If it were some weaker unity of the World Realm martial artists, they would probably have been killed by these 3 arrows. 7th Uncle held another arrow in his hand. He looked at Chu Xiu, who was spitting blood, and said lightly, "It's already not easy for you to block 6 of my 13 soul-stealing arrows. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see the next 3 arrows." From 7th Uncle's point of view, Chu Xiu was already seriously injured, and he was confident that he could kill Chu Xiu within 2 arrows. The last arrow of the 13 soul-stealing arrows was indeed not something that Chu Xiu would be able to see. There was a sharp, scarlet killing intent coiled around the arrow. In fact, 7th Uncle's arrows carried a different amount of power. The 13 soul-stealing arrows was not just a martial art. It included 13 different variations. This arrow burst out, and its killing intent soared to the sky. Even the silver-white arrow was dyed scarlet red. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu did not choose to dodge. Instead, he stared at the arrow and used the heaven's sun gazing at air skill to its limit. His mental strength was greatly depleted, and there was even a sharp pain in his mind. At this moment, in Chu Xiu's eyes, there was not a single flaw in 7th Uncle's arrow. It was the pinnacle of power, and it could be said to be invulnerable. This level of heaven's sun gazing at air skill was not enough. A glimmer of light shone in Chu Xiu's eyes, and 2 streaks of blood flowed out from the bottom of his eyes. However, Chu Xiu did not even blink. At this moment, in Chu Xiu's eyes, there were dense lines twisting on the arrow that represented power. However, when he used the heaven's sun gazing at air skill to its limit, those lines began to lengthen and twist. At this moment, Chu Xiu seemed to have stepped into a new world. He saw it. Those lengthening lines did not represent the present, but the future. It was the path of 7th Uncle's arrow. The heaven's sun gazing at air skill's power was restrained, and ordinary people would not be able to see through Chu Xiu's abnormality. In the eyes of the crowd, after 7th Uncle shot this arrow, Chu Xiu stood there foolishly, as if he had given up resisting and was ready to die. Lu Fengxian, who was fighting with Tichertsen, widened her eyes. She wanted to save Chu Xiu, but she was firmly entangled by Tichertsen and could not escape. Xia Xiaolu, Mo Tianlin, and the others wanted to save Chu Xiu, but faced with 7th Uncle's arrow, they did not have the strength to do so. Yin Luohua, the leader of the Thunder Cloud stronghold, Chen Yun, and the others, who had suffered at the hands of Chu Xiu, were secretly sneering. "Weren't you Chu Xiu arrogant? Weren't you overbearing? Weren't you looking down on everyone? What about now? You're still going to die here." However, the next scene caused everyone to widen their eyes in disbelief. 7th Uncle's arrow was less than 10 feet away from Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu suddenly stepped 3 feet in one direction. It was at this distance of 3 feet that the arrow narrowly brushed past Chu Xiu. Even the astral energy on the arrow barely brushed past Chu Xiu's protective astral energy. There was not the slightest bit of conflict. 7th Uncle's eyes revealed a look of shock. However, this was not the end. The 13 soul-stealing arrows chased after the soul. Without blood, how could it be so easily dodged? After the arrow missed, a glaring red glow of murderous intent erupted from the arrow. It actually turned around and continued to stab towards Chu Xiu's back. Chu Xiu did not even look back. He once again took a step in another direction, and the arrow once again brushed past Chu Xiu's body. After missing for the second time, the arrow turned around again, but the result was the same. It still missed. After being dodged by Chu Xiu 3 times in a row, the stellar energy attached to the arrow was no longer enough to make it turn around again. The arrow was directly nailed into the wall of the armory. The force was still astonishing, and it was directly nailed into the wall, leaving only a tail feather trembling. Everyone present looked at Chu Xiu, then at seventh uncle. They could not figure out what was going on. With a warrior's speed, it was very easy to dodge ordinary arrows because the trajectory of the arrows was fixed. However, seventh uncle's 13 soul-stealing arrows were attached with stellar energy. They chased after the soul and directly locked onto Chu Xiu. Their trajectories were constantly changing, but Chu Xiu was able to dodge them every time. The stellar energy on the arrow was exhausted, so it could no longer lock onto Chu Xiu. It was as if seventh uncle was acting with Chu Xiu. It was simply incredible. Chapter 363. The Heaven Sun's gazing at air technique could be said to be the most difficult technique that Chu Xiu had ever cultivated. He had no clue at all. The last time Chu Xiu faced Feng Wuling, who was at the oneness of heaven and man realm, when he was at the three-flower realm at one's prominence. It could be said that he had only managed to cultivate the Heaven Sun's gazing at air technique to the entry level under great pressure. After that, Chu Xiu had studied the Heaven Sun's gazing at air technique when he was in seclusion or when he had nothing to do. However, he had no clue at all. It wasn't until now, when Chu Xiu was fighting with the seventh uncle and under the great pressure of the 13 soul-stealing arrows, that the Heaven Sun's gazing at air technique had finally broken through to the entry level. He could now initially display the powerful power of the Heaven's gazing at air technique. Heaven's gazing at air, killing while talking. The Heaven Sun's gazing at air technique had never been used to find the opponent's flaws. Instead, it was used to predict the trajectory of the opponent's attack. A single leaf could tell autumn by understanding all of the opponent's attacks and killing while talking. The entry-level Heaven Sun's gazing at air technique could not reach such a terrifying level. However, Chu Xiu was already able to see the trajectory of the seventh uncle's attack and dodge the arrow before it reached him. No matter how the seventh uncle changed the direction of the arrow, it was useless. Everything was within Chu Xiu's expectations. It could be said that the Heaven Sun's gazing at air technique had the greatest restraining effect on a warrior like the seventh uncle. Of course, the way to break the Heaven's gazing at air technique was very simple. The seventh uncle's arrow had reached an extreme speed. Even if Chu Xiu saw the trajectory of the arrow, he would not be able to dodge it. Unfortunately, the seventh uncle was not fast enough, and Chu Xiu was not slow either. The Heaven Sun's gazing at air technique was originally only a supplementary technique. The stronger one was, the greater the power that the Heaven Sun's gazing at air technique could create. On the other hand, no matter how many things Chu Xiu saw, it was useless because he had no ability to block or dodge these attacks. At this moment, the seventh uncle gritted his teeth as he looked at Chu Xiu, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. It was not that no one could resist his 13 soul-stealing arrows. In fact, the way to resist the 13 soul-stealing arrows was very simple. Just like what Chu Xiu had done before, he could directly use his own strength to resist the arrows and destroy all the gang qi on the arrows. But the problem was that seventh uncle never expected that someone would be able to dodge his arrows in such a situation. Chu Xiu's speed didn't change, but it was as if he had discussed it with Chu Xiu. It just so happened that the power of his arrow had reached a limit, and he couldn't dodge after changing directions. Even the range of his stellar energy had been calculated by Chu Xiu. Wherever the arrow passed, it didn't cause any damage to Chu Xiu. Then what exactly was going on? If it wasn't Chu Xiu's speed that was too fast, could it be that his arrows were too slow? Seeing that Chu Xiu's figure was quickly approaching, seventh uncle had no time to think. He still had 2 arrows in his hand. He stood still, drew his bow, nocked an arrow, and shot. This series of actions was like an afterimage, and the speed was extremely fast. The arrow was almost in front of Chu Xiu the moment it left the bowstring. However, the sharp-eyed people present could already see that Chu Xiu had already moved the moment seventh uncle drew his bow and nocked an arrow. The moment he moved his feet, the arrow had already streaked past him. This kind of prediction was simply terrifying. This arrow was the same as the previous one. It went back and forth twice, but it still couldn't hurt Chu Xiu. The power on the arrow had been exhausted, and it was nailed to the wall. Seeing that Chu Xiu's figure was getting closer and closer, seventh uncle aimed his last arrow at Chu Xiu. However, this arrow didn't leave the bowstring, and cold sweat was already rolling down seventh uncle's head. It wasn't that seventh uncle didn't want to shoot this arrow, but that even if he shot it, he wouldn't be able to hurt Chu Xiu. He simply didn't know how to break out of Chu Xiu's current strange state. Before the arrow left the bowstring, seventh uncle directly yelled at Xiahou Wujiang, "Young master! Run!" Seventh uncle wasn't seriously injured, but he knew that once Chu Xiu got close to him, 90% of his martial arts would be crippled. At that time, Xiahou Wujiang would also be in danger. Xiahou Wujiang, who was fighting with Mo Tianlin and the others, saw the situation on seventh uncle's side. He gritted his teeth, and his eyes revealed a look of unwillingness. Xiahou Wujiang was really unwilling. He finally had such a good opportunity, but in the end, he still couldn't kill Chu Xiu. This even made Xiahou Wujiang doubt whether this Chu Xiu was really his nemesis in life. At the God Weapon Conference, he originally wanted to humiliate Mo Tianlin, but the result was that Chu Xiu's interference was unsettled, and his ranking on the Longhu list fell. Later, he wanted to instigate the martial artists of Eastern Qi to kill Chu Xiu, but the result was that Chu Xiu's fame spread all over the world, and his reputation plummeted. He was ridiculed by others. This time, Xiahou Wujiang thought that he had acted decisively enough. He decisively gave up the treasures in the sky-reaching tower in exchange for joining forces with Tichertsen to kill Chu Xiu. In the end, Chu Xiu still turned the tables. Xiahou Wujiang really couldn't understand why this was happening. However, the current situation didn't give Xiahou Wujiang the time to ask why, and he didn't have time to delay. Golden light erupted from his body, and his powerful mental energy directly shook Missouri Tianlin and the others back. Xiahou Wujiang's figure immediately fled. A hint of killing intent appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. He looked at seventh uncle and sneered. Xiahou Wujiang is very decisive in escaping. You told him to escape, and he fled. He doesn't care about your life or death at all. Seventh uncle's last arrow was always aimed at Chu Xiu. He knew that his arrow would most likely miss, so he only shot this arrow in case Chu Xiu abandoned him to chase after Xiahou Wujiang. Hearing this, seventh uncle said indifferently, "My life was given by the family head. In this life, I will go through fire and water for the Xiahou family. As long as young master escapes, I won't disappoint the family head for saving my life. Moreover, although I don't know what method you used to avoid my 13 deadly arrows, do you really think that I don't know anything else besides the bow and arrow? Young master won't die, and you can't kill me either." Chu Xiu formed the internal binding seal, and his figure appeared in front of seventh uncle in an instant. He slashed out with the demonic saber in his hand, and the demonic saber light instantly enveloped seventh uncle. "Since you're so confident, then I'll send you on your way today." Seeing the surging demonic saber light in front of him, seventh uncle's eyes revealed a hint of ruthlessness. He didn't shoot his last arrow. Seventh uncle pressed the giant bow in his hand, and a series of mechanical sounds appeared. In the blink of an eye, the giant bow turned into a short spear, and the arrow was the tip of the spear. His giant bow was called Xuanji, and it was forged according to the ancient Qinji sect's divine weapon, the Xuanji transformation. According to legend, the ancient divine weapon, the Xuanji transformation, could change its form at will, and it could evolve into 18 kinds of weapons. It was very agile. Seventh Uncle's Xuanji transformation was a replica, and it only had 3 forms. Normally, it was just an iron box that was convenient to carry around. Its main body was the arrow and the bow, and when it was in close combat, the giant bow could be used as a short stick or a short spear. However, Seventh Uncle had never used the last form because he had almost never been forced into such a desperate situation. The spear light swept out, and Seventh Uncle struggled to resist Chu Xiu's demonic saber light. Seventh Uncle didn't lie. He did no other things besides the bow, and his spear skills were proof. Unfortunately, compared to his amazing 13 soul-stealing arrows, his spear skills were too mediocre. It was so mediocre that one couldn't bear to look at it. Without the 13 soul-stealing arrows, it was difficult for Seventh Uncle to exert even 90% of his strength. Under Chu Xiu's Avici Path's 3 blades, he was forced to retreat step by step. As Chu Xiu's saber fell, the 3-layered Avici demon blade condensed into one. With a loud bang, Seventh Uncle was directly hit, and he was sent flying while vomiting blood. Seeing Chu Xiu's figure once again holding a saber, Seventh Uncle couldn't help but secretly curse him as a monster. His previous arrows had already seriously injured Chu Xiu, and his internal organs were already injured. Yet, he was still able to erupt with such a level of power. If this wasn't a monster, what was? In fact, Seventh Uncle had underestimated Chu Xiu. With the glazed golden thread goo and the internal lion seal suppressing his injuries, Chu Xiu's internal organs were indeed injured, but his injuries weren't as serious as Seventh Uncle had imagined. He still had the strength to fight. On the other hand, Seventh Uncle's 13 soul-snatching arrows had consumed a lot of his gang energy and inner force. Coupled with his mediocre spear technique, he was completely suppressed when he fought with Chu Xiu. He had already been bombarded to the point of vomiting blood. Seeing that he could no longer resist, Seventh Uncle estimated that Xiahou Wujiang would be able to escape from heaven-reaching tower. When Chu Xiu's body shone with demonic aura and slashed again, the short spear in his hand suddenly changed. It split into 2, revealing the bowstring in the middle. It directly cut through the stellar energy and enveloped the heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand. The 2 parts of the spear body began to disintegrate, turning into countless hidden weapons that covered the sky and earth, rushing towards Chu Xiu. Although heaven's sun gazing at air did not consume internal strength, it consumed an abnormally large amount of mental strength. Thus, Chu Xiu could not maintain the state of heaven's sun gazing at air all the time. Thus, Seventh Uncle's move was something that Chu Xiu did not expect. Similarly, this was Seventh Uncle's trump card. It could not be considered a transformation, and could only be said to be a last-ditch effort to abandon his weapon. With the bowstring wrapped around the heavenly demon dance, and the hidden weapons that came swarming towards him, Chu Xiu had no choice but to temporarily abandon his saber and use the Dugu seal to defend himself. By the time he blocked all these hidden weapons, Seventh Uncle had already burst out with his fastest speed and escaped out of the arsenal. Chu Xiu took a step forward and arrived first despite moving later. His speed was almost extremely fast, and he blasted out the annihilating heaven and earth obliterating oblivion killing fist. When the fist force landed, the killing intent had already blasted into Seventh Uncle's back, causing him to immediately spit out a mouthful of blood mixed with fragments of his internal organs. In the blink of an eye, his fist turned into a palm, and the annihilating heaven and earth obliterating great purple sun palm fell. Immediately, the evil purple sun demonic flame entered his body, causing Seventh Uncle to spit out another mouthful of blood that was stained with purplish-black demonic aura. However, Seventh Uncle's desire to live was really strong to the extreme. After being hit by Chu Xiu's fist and palm, he forcibly received the entire force. Using this force, his figure directly leaped out of the arsenal and disappeared into the fog. Chapter 364. Seventh uncle escaped from the arsenal. Chu Xiu did not chase after him because there was no need to do so. If there were no accidents, seventh uncle should not be able to survive. The explosive power of the great violet yang hand of extinguishing skies and extinguishing earth might not be enough, but the power of the purple yang demonic flame that followed was like a maggot in one's bones, and it was impossible to ignore. If seventh uncle was at his peak, he naturally would not be afraid of the purple yang demonic flame. However, Chu Xiu had severely injured him and then used the oblivion-killing fist to shatter his opponent's internal organs. At this moment, seventh uncle was already an arrow at the end of its flight. The purple yang demonic flame was definitely a fatal existence for seventh uncle in this state. Unless he could meet a unity of heaven and man expert who was willing to help him expel the purple yang demonic flame, seventh uncle would definitely die. Of course, Chu Xiu did not go to a safe place to catch up with seventh uncle because he had exhausted himself a little. After all, seventh uncle's strength was obvious. This time, if Chu Xiu had not comprehended the heaven's sun gazing at air at the last moment, he would have been in danger. Although Chu Xiu won in the end, he had also exhausted a lot of his strength. It was better not to chase a cornered enemy, and it was more important to take care of the benefits in front of him. At this moment, Teachertsen was dumbfounded as he looked at Chu Xiu. He did not expect that Chu Xiu would actually win. Seventh uncle, whose strength definitely far exceeded his own, was actually beaten by Chu Xiu to the point of vomiting blood and escaping with serious injuries. No matter how he looked at it, it was a little unbelievable. Chu Xiu flashed a sinister smile at Teacher Cien, Eldertsen. I've already said before that standing on Xiahou Wujiang's side was a wrong decision. You will regret it. Now that you've seen the results, I'm right. Your choice was wrong. Chu Xiu waved his hand and his stellar energy erupted. The heavenly demon dance, which had been entangled by the bowstring, was sucked back into Chu Xiu's hand. Demonic energy soared into the sky. Without a word, he slashed at Teachertsen. Teachertsen, who was currently fighting with Lu Fengxian, also did not say anything. The sword in his hand glowed with purple and green lightning. However, he did not fight Chu Xiu head-on. Instead, he repelled Lu Fengxian's halberd, called out to his disciple, and turned to flee. Teachertsen was indeed a wily old fox. His ability to steer the ship according to the wind was very strong. The moment he saw that the situation was not good, he immediately fled. He was very decisive. Just Lu Fengxian alone was enough to make him unable to defeat her. She was very difficult to deal with. Now, there was also Chu Xiu, whose strength even made him feel frightened. The secret box at the top of the green tree was in Chu Xiu's hand. This time, Chu Xiu had put in the most effort in the Tower of Tong Tian. Lu Fengxian and the others silently agreed that it was normal for Chu Xiu to take the most. The others did not dare to fight with Chu Xiu. So after Chu Xiu took the secret box at the top and a dozen other boxes at the front, he immediately called for everyone to turn and leave. Lu Fengxian and the others had taken most of the boxes and did not linger. Chu Xiu and the others did not touch the boxes in the middle and lower parts, giving the wandering warriors a chance. As the Tower of Tong Tian shook more and more, these people showed no signs of leaving. Chu Xiu did not have the good intention to remind these people. Moreover, even if Chu Xiu did, it would be useless. In front of benefits, there were only a few who could control their greed. Chu Xiu was sure that if he were to remind them, they would definitely think that he wanted to monopolize these things, and that was why he was threatening them. After Chu Xiu and the others left the Tower of Tong Tian, the entire Tower of Tong Tian began to shake and sink. A portion of the warriors who escaped with Chu Xiu had a look of lingering fear. If they hadn't left just now, they would have been the ones buried under the ground. The Tower of Tong Tian had completely sunk into the ground. The people of the Yunu Palace immediately left after obtaining some benefits. The others did the same. Chu Xiu looked at Lu Fengxian and the others and asked, Brother Lu, do you have anything to do next? Mo Tianlin said, I didn't have anything to do before. Brother Xia and Brother Lu came to find me, so we wanted to come to the pass and meet up with Brother Chu. But now that Brother Chu is injured, I have to bring the things and information I obtained from the Tower of Tong Tian back to the Mo family, so I won't disturb Brother Chu any longer. Xia Xiaolu and Lu Fengxian nodded. Although Chu Xiu looked fine, everyone knew that Chu Xiu's current situation was not good. This was not the time to chat. Lu Fengxian also said, I've been in West Chu for a while, I'm going back to my northern Yen home to take a look. In the past, Lu Fengxian was forced out of northern Yen because he and Chu Xiu stole Nie Donglio's opportunity and were forced out of northern Yen by the Morgue village. Now that Lu Fengxian's strength had greatly increased, he had the 5 Qis returning to the origin realm, and his battle strength was comparable to experts at the unity of the world realm. If he returned to northern Yen now, he would not need to fear the Morgue village. Unless a martial arts grandmaster like Nie Renlong personally took action, Lu Fengxian was confident he could escape. Moreover, Nie Renlong did not have nothing better to do. He was a dignified martial arts grandmaster, the head of the Morgue village, he had countless things to do. He was bored, so he came to find trouble with Lu Fengxian because of some trivial matters between the younger generation. After they chatted for a while, Chu Xiu took his things and said goodbye to them. At the same time, on a small road near Eastern Qi, Xiahou Wujiang was waiting for his 7th uncle. Being forced out of Tong Tian Tower, Xiahou Wujiang was so angry that he almost crushed his teeth. Xiahou Wujiang did not hate himself for not obtaining the treasures in Tong Tian Tower, but he hated himself for being defeated by Chu Xiu. It seemed that from the time he met Chu Xiu, he had never taken advantage of Chu Xiu. However, Xiahou Wujiang did not think too much about it. He was not a weak-minded trash like Lin Kaiyun of Sword King City, who could not recover after being defeated by Chu Xiu. He was the future heir of the Xiahou clan. After being taught a lesson by Xiahou Zhen, Xiahou Wujiang also knew that he would not be facing some internal competitors of the Xiahou clan, nor would he be facing young martial artists like Chu Xiu or Mo Tianlin, but the heroes of the entire Jianghu. Only by taking a long-term view could he go further. He had suffered several losses in the hands of Chu Xiu, but he did not believe that he would suffer a loss in the hands of Chu Xiu in this life. However, at this time, Xiahou Wujiang was still puzzled. It had been so long, why hadn't his 7th uncle arrived? Xiahou Wujiang had never thought that something would happen to his 7th uncle. As Xiahou Zhen's confidant, his 7th uncle was carefully selected by Xiahou Zhen. His strength was absolutely outstanding among his peers. Even if his 13 soul-stealing arrows had been used up, nothing should have happened to him. However, at this time, a figure staggered over, vomiting blood as he walked. Xiahou Wujiang fixed his eyes on the figure and saw that it was his 7th uncle, but at this time, his appearance was extremely miserable. His 7th uncle's face no longer had the slightest trace of blood, and he was as pale as a piece of paper. In his meridians, there were wisps of purplish-black aura running back and forth, looking extremely evil. 7th uncle. Xiahou Wujiang immediately took out an elixir and wanted to stuff it into his 7th uncle's mouth, but he was stopped by a wave of his hand. 7th uncle smiled bitterly and pointed to his back. The clothes there had been shattered, and there was a purplish-black palm print on his back that had sunk deep into his skin and flesh. It was abnormally terrifying. 7th uncle struggled and said, "Young master, don't waste your strength. It's useless. Chu Xiu's palm force is insidious and powerful. Unless there is another martial artist who is also at the unity of heaven and man realm, no one can save me. I'm afraid I can't make it this time. Young master, please listen to me. If there is no clan head's full support, don't touch Chu Xiu for the time being. Only when you are 100% sure that you can completely kill Chu Xiu can you make a move." After saying that, seventh uncle seemed to have overexerted himself. The purple sun devil flame in his body suddenly flourished and completely swallowed his heart meridians, causing him to vomit a mouthful of purplish-black blood. He was completely lifeless. Seventh uncle. Chapter 365. Looking at seventh uncle's corpse, Xiahou Wujiang's eyes flickered with boundless hatred and sorrow. When Chu Xiu killed Xiahou Wujiang only had hatred and anger. In fact, the hatred was not the most, anger was the majority. He was angry that Chu Xiu had killed his woman, not that Chu Xiu had killed his woman. Because Xiahou Wujiang had many women, and was not the only one. Er's death could make him angry, but it would not make him sad. But now, seventh uncle's death made Xiahou Wujiang's hatred rise to the sky. At the same time, he was also very sad because seventh uncle watched him grow up. Although Xiahou Wujiang showed his talent when he was young, Xiahou Zhen was extremely strict with Xiahou Wujiang. He let seventh uncle and others supervise his cultivation and punish him if he made a mistake. At this time, seventh uncle, as Xiahou Zhen's confidant, did not do everything according to Xiahou Zhen's instructions. Instead, when Xiahou Wujiang was too tired, he would go easy on him, and when Xiahou Wujiang was punished, he would also help him plead for mercy. Therefore, for Xiahou Wujiang, seventh uncle was no different from his real family. He was even much better than those uncles of the Xiahou clan who schemed against him the moment they met and dug holes for him. But now, seventh uncle was dead, and he died in the hands of Chu Xiu. How could Xiahou Wujiang not hate him? But no matter how much he hated him, Xiahou Wujiang was not stupid enough to go back to Chu Xiu to take revenge at this time. Seventh uncle was dead. He was not finished, and the Xiahou clan was not finished either. At this time, Chu Xiu naturally did not care about seventh uncle's life or death. After getting the things in the Tower of Babel, Chu Xiu immediately returned to the Guanxi land to count the spoils. In the original plot, the most precious thing in Tong Tian Tower should be the body refining skill, which was considered a good skill in the whole world. Now that the secret box was in Chu Xiu's hands, if Chu Xiu's guess was right, it should be this thing. The box looked simple and was made of ordinary black iron. If it wasn't for the fact that it was placed on the highest floor of the armory, Chu Xiu wouldn't have believed that it was the most precious book in the armory. When he opened the secret box, there wasn't just one cultivation technique inside. Instead, there was an entire set. The top cultivation technique had 5 words written in gold, Vajra superpower. In the Jianghu, when it came to Daoist, Buddhist, and demonic sects, the most common were the 3 sections. It was just that the demonic Tao was on the decline. On the other hand, Buddhism was revered in the north and the south. The North Buddhist sect, the Great Light Temple, cultivated the physique, while the South Buddhist sect, the Subodhi Monastery, cultivated the Dharma. These 2 sects practically encompassed 90% of the Buddhist martial arts in the entire pugilistic world. In particular, the Great Light Temple. Almost all the Buddhist body refining skills in the world originated from the Great Light Temple. This was the case both in ancient times and now. Of course, this was not absolute. This was the case with the Vajra superpower. It was created by an eminent Buddhist monk who didn't belong to the Great Light Temple. However, when it was cultivated to the peak, its power was not inferior to the Great Light Temple's body refining skills. The main purpose of the Vajra superpower was simple and direct. It was to cultivate the power of the physical body and evolve the power of Guardian Vajra. However, if this was all, then the Vajra superpower could only be regarded as a low-class or mid-class body refining skill. It would definitely not be ranked in the Jianghu. It would not be collected by the sky-reaching martial sect and regarded as the most precious cultivation technique book. The entry level of the Vajra superpower was slightly mediocre. What could really unleash the power of the Vajra superpower was the subsequent changes. Legend had it that the Vajra superpower was formed by the 32 Vajra Dharma of Buddhism. Those who cultivated it could obtain the power of Vajra superpower. When cultivated to great success, they could comprehend and condense their own Dharma. In fact, when they reached the peak, they would not be constrained by the power of the Dharma. Their appearance would be completely removed, and only their spirit would remain. They would reach the realm where their spirit would move and their power would be generated. Simply put, whether the Vajra superpower was powerful or not depended on the cultivator. In fact, the Dharma that every cultivator could cultivate was different. Naturally, the power would be different as well. The Vajra superpower book was so thick. In fact, only a portion of the main cultivation techniques took up. The rest were the insights left behind by other cultivators, as well as the Dharma that they left behind. Among them were the Vajra superpower Dharma, the blissful boy Dharma, the foolish and clumsy Dharma, the all-Dharma silence Dharma, the all rivers flow into the sea, and the unique and righteous Dharma. These Dharma were left behind by the seniors who had cultivated the Vajra superpower in the past. They were the Dharma that belonged to them. Chu Xiu could cultivate them. These Dharma could help Chu Xiu get started as soon as possible. However, these Dharma were not Chu Xiu's own insights. Even if Chu Xiu used them, he would not be able to cultivate them to the peak. If he really wanted to understand the true meaning of the Vajra superpower, he would have to comprehend his own Dharma. In the future, if Chu Xiu could combine all the Dharma into one and reach the realm of no form and soul, a single thought would be able to create all kinds of techniques. This was the ultimate state of the Vajra superpower, also known as the Infinite Tribulation Golden Body. These were all introductions in the book. No one knew if anyone had cultivated to this realm. Moreover, this cultivation technique rarely appeared in the original plot, so it did not have a grade, and there was no way to give it a fixed grade. The reason was very simple. Although the pugilistic world had long concluded that there was no strongest cultivation technique, only the strongest people, a cultivation technique should have an upper and lower limit. However, martial arts like the Vajra superpower had no upper and lower limit. Anyone could cultivate it. As for what kind of power one could achieve after cultivating it, it could only be said that the difference was like heaven and earth, so it was not easy to set a grade. When he opened the other secret boxes, there were more cultivation techniques in them. There were from the Daoist, Buddhist, and demonic sections. There were also some very strange cultivation techniques. However, Chu Xiu took a look and found that almost all of them were of no use to him. Now, Chu Xiu's cultivation technique inheritance was not inferior to those of the disciples of the big sections. In fact, it was even stronger than them. Therefore, those 4th and 5th revolution cultivation techniques that other people in the pugilistic world regarded as treasures, Chu Xiu was not interested in them. As for the other things, Chu Xiu only took a few of the more precious elixirs. He did not touch the rest of the things. He was preparing to hand them over to the Guanzhong torture room. Of course, Chu Xiu did this not because he was selfless, but because these things could prove Chu Xiu's value. Although the Guanzhong torture room was a very special existence, its nature was not much different from most of the martial forces. The sect would provide protection for you, and you would also have to provide enough value for the sect. The two sides complemented each other. All along, Chu Xiu had already provided a lot of reputation for the Guanzhong torture room. Now, these things from the Tower of Babel were the benefits that Chu Xiu could provide for the Guanzhong torture room. Therefore, when something happened to Chu Xiu, it was the Guanzhong torture room's turn to protect him. This was also the reason why Chu Xiu dared to kill Ming Chen. Of course, if the Guanzhong torture room was afraid of trouble, they could choose not to protect him. But then, what would happen to the people's hearts? A force that couldn't even protect its own people was bound to be divided and would probably be on the verge of decline. As expected, Chu Xiu did not have to wait for long. Guan Siyu had already sent Yuqi over and asked Chu Xiu to make a trip to the Guanzhong torture room headquarters. When he saw Chu Xiu again, Yuqi took the initiative to salute Chu Xiu and said, "Official Chu, you've caused quite a commotion this time." Yuqi was a person who knew his limits. In the past, Chu Xiu's rank was similar to his, so Yuqi could treat Chu Xiu as an equal. But now, Chu Xiu was already a torture officer. Although this position did not make Yuqi be polite or respectful to Chu Xiu, it was necessary to at least respect him. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Brother Yuqi, we've known each other for such a long time. If you're being so polite, you're treating me like an outsider. Let's just address each other like before." As for the Skirich Tower incident this time, the pugilistic world has always looked at the person with the bigger fist and the most things. Do you think I should take the initiative to share the things with others? Hearing that, Yuqi laughed bitterly and said, "Although that makes sense, Brother Chu, you killed the people from the Temple of Great Light in front of everyone this time. You were a little too ruthless. I'm afraid this matter won't be resolved so easily. Anyway, the Hall Master sent you to the headquarters to discuss how to resolve this matter. Brother Chu, you'd better be mentally prepared." Yuqi did not have any ill feelings towards Chu Xiu because Chu Xiu knew his limits. Previously, Yuqi had addressed Chu Xiu as Lord, but that was because he understood the rules. If Chu Xiu were to forcefully accept it, although there was no problem, it would inevitably make people feel that he was inflating his ego, and it would be somewhat uncomfortable. Therefore, Yuqi asked Chu Xiu to be mentally prepared and think about how to deceive this matter on the way. Chu Xiu was not worried at all. Instead, he chuckled and cupped his hands. "Thank you for your advice, Brother Yuqi." With that, Chu Xiu followed Yuqi and headed for the headquarters of the torture chamber. When they arrived at the Guanzhong torture room, it was already night. Chu Xiu was in no hurry to see Guan Siyu. Instead, he asked Yuqi to find a guest room in the headquarters for him to stay in. After all, he was now a torture officer, so he still had this treatment. After nightfall, Chu Xiu sat in the room and drank tea. The room was shrouded in a black demonic mist, but there was also a fragrant wind. Mei Qinglian's figure appeared within. Chu Xiu was surprised. "Madam, you dare to make a move in the torture chamber's headquarters? Aren't you afraid of Guan Siyu noticing?" Mei Qinglian walked to the chair beside Chu Xiu and sat down. She said lazily, "Him? As long as I don't want him to notice, he won't be able to. Also, don't call me madam. Since you know my identity, do you really think I'll stay beside that old thing for the rest of my life?" Chu Xiu smiled. "Then what should I call you? Sect Master Mei?" Mei Qinglian waved her hand. "Forget it. None of the Yin Demon sect masters had a good ending. Moreover, I've never inherited the position of the Yin Demon sect master. When there were still a few people in the Yin Demon sect, I was the Yin Demon sect saintess. Moreover, I'm also your elder. If you want to call me, just call me saintess. Also, you're quite bold this time. You killed the martial monk instructor of the Great Light Temple's Vajra department just like that." After Guan Siyu heard about it, he was so angry that he smashed his cup. Chapter 366. Chu Xiu was not surprised that Guan Siyu smashed her cup in anger. On the contrary, it would be strange if Guan Siyu did not react at all. Chu Xiu just smiled at Mei Qinglian and said, "Someone wants to kill me, so I naturally have to kill him. Who cares if he is from the Great Light Temple or the Sabodhi Monastery? I let him go once, but do you think I can turn an enemy into a friend? Since it is impossible to reconcile, I can only put him to death." When Mei Qinglian heard this, she also clapped her hands and said with a smile, "Guan Siyu blames you, but I won't. The Great Light Temple really should be dealt with." In the past, when the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, the Great Light Temple was one of the sects that contributed the most. However, this is something that happened hundreds and thousands of years ago, so I don't want to say anything more. Later on, my dark demon sect was very low-key, but we were still chased by those damn bald donkeys all over Jianghu. They are not human at all. When mentioning the Great Light Temple, it was clear that Mei Qinglian also hated them so much that the roots of her teeth itched, even though those were things of the past. With a wave of her hand, Mei Qinglian said to Chu Xiu, "You have caused a lot of trouble this time, but Guan Siyu should not punish you severely. I will also add fuel to the fire from the side and let Guan Siyu help you this time." Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Saintess." Mei Qinglian waved her hand and said, "Don't be in a hurry to thank me. After this is over, I still have something that I need your help with." Chu Xiu asked, "What is it?" Mei Qinglian rolled her eyes at Chu Xiu and said, "Don't worry. With your strength, do you think I will trick you? This is something that is within your ability, and it is also good for you. After this is over, I will tell you. I will not let you suffer." After keeping Chu Xiu in suspense for a while, Mei Qinglian stood up and left under the cover of the black fog in Devil Qi. The next morning, Chu Xiu arrived at Guan Siyu's study. Mei Qinglian was sitting beside Guan Siyu. Guan Siyu's expression was extremely gloomy when he saw Chu Xiu arrive. He snorted coldly and said, "Chu Xiu, what did I tell you last time? What did you do in the end? You killed people from the Great Guangming Temple just like that, but have you ever considered that the Guanzhong torture room would become enemies with the Great Guangming Temple because of this?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Hall Master, it's not that I want to kill the people from the Temple of Great Light, it's the people from the Temple of Great Light who want to kill me. Everything in the pugilistic world had to be reasonable. Even if the other party was the Northern Buddhist sect and the Great Light Temple, could they be unreasonable? That Ming Chen came to find me for revenge and wanted my life. Could it be that I had to endure it? However, I will take responsibility for this matter alone. I was the one who killed them, and it has nothing to do with the Guanzhong torture room. This is also a personal grudge that was formed before I joined the Guanzhong torture room. I am willing to leave the Guanzhong torture room and bear the consequences of this matter alone." As he said that, Chu Xiu took out the techniques he obtained from the sky-reaching tower and said in a deep voice, "The place where the sky-reaching tower appeared is now the Guanzhong torture room's territory. I obtained these from the sky-reaching tower, so I should hand them over to the Guanzhong torture room. However, from now on, I can no longer work for the Guanzhong torture room." Mei Qinglian looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of mockery in her eyes. Even she could see through this act of retreating in order to advance, let alone Guan Siyu. However, in the current situation, Chu Xiu's move was still useful. At least Guan Siyu would not do something that would cause dissension in the Guanzhong torture room. Mei Qinglian said, "Master, this time, the monks from the Temple of Great Light were too overbearing. If Chu Xiu had backed down and escaped, not only would the Guanzhong torture room not be able to get the items in the sky-reaching tower, our reputation would also be tarnished." Ming Chen was just a martial monk instructor under the Vajrayard. He was not a famous person in the Jianghu. Would killing him provoke the abbot of the Temple of Great Light? Hearing Mei Qinglian's words, Guan Siyu's expression became a little better. However, he still snorted and said, "All right, stop acting. The Guanzhong torture room will help you handle this matter. However, you must carefully consider the consequences before taking action next time. Otherwise, if one day you cause so much trouble that the Guanzhong torture room can't handle it, you'll have to pray for your own good." Chu Xiu smiled and stood up. He cupped his hands and bowed. "Thank you, Hall Master." Guan Siyu told Chu Xiu to be careful. In fact, when Chu Xiu killed Ming Chen, he had already considered it carefully. Chu Xiu knew that the Guanzhong torture room had the ability to handle this matter. The person Chu Xiu had killed was not a young talent from the Temple of Great Light, nor was he an important person. The Temple of Great Light would not come to the Guanzhong torture room with great fanfare to ask for Ming Chen. Moreover, if Guan Siyu was really afraid at this time and did not want to offend the Temple of Great Light for Chu Xiu, then it was very simple. Chu Xiu could just leave. Anyway, for Chu Xiu, the Guanzhong torture room was just a springboard for himself. Chu Xiu did not have any nostalgia for the Guanzhong torture room. Guan Siyu found Yuqi, took out a string of prayer beads, and handed it to Yuqi. She said, "Get someone to send this string of prayer beads to the Temple of Great Light." Before Xiahou Wujiang could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Xiahou Zhen. Xiahou Zhen said coldly, "I taught you to only look at the results, not the process. I don't care about what happened to Chu Xiu. Didn't I tell you last time that you should be cautious and decisive? Don't make a move if you don't have the confidence to win. What did you do? You still lost, and you even made my seventh uncle pay with his life for this matter. One failure can be accepted, and two can also be forgiven, but you lost to Chu Xiu again and again. This can only prove that there are problems with your ability and mentality. Do you know that if you weren't the most talented among my children, it would have crippled you right now?" Xiahou Wujiang lowered his head and didn't dare to speak, because Xiahou Zhen didn't even give him a chance to explain. Xiahou Wujiang was indeed defeated somewhat miserably this time, and even lost his seventh uncle's life. Xiahou Zhen was really angry this time. His seventh uncle was his most trusted right-hand man. He was absolutely worthy of his trust, and he was the kind of confidant who would die for him at any time. Xiahou Zhen didn't have many people like this around him. Xiahou Zhen trusted them even more than his own clansmen. But now, his seventh uncle died because of Xiahou Wujiang. This made Xiahou Zhen feel pity and heartache at the same time. Humans weren't plants or trees. How could they be emotionless? His seventh uncle had been by his side for more than 20 years, but now he had died a violent death. Xiahou Zhen couldn't remain indifferent. Looking coldly at Xiahou Wujiang, Xiahou Zhen said coldly, "You go to the ancestral hall and reflect on yourself now. My seventh uncle won't die in vain. The Guanzhong torture room must also give my Xiahou clan an explanation for this matter." In the past, Xiahou Zhen's character could be said to be quite steady and calm, and he rarely lost his composure like he did now. If it wasn't seventh uncle who died this time, but Xiahou Wujiang's guards and the like, Xiahou Zhen would at most teach Xiahou Wujiang a lesson and let him grow up through setbacks, and that would be it. It was fine for the older generation like Xiahou Zhen to deal with the grudges between the younger generation, but it would be somewhat embarrassing and against the rules. But this time, his seventh uncle was killed by Chu Xiu, which made Xiahou Zhen unable to remain indifferent. Otherwise, how would the other confidants like his seventh uncle view him? Just as Xiahou Zhen was about to mobilize the people of the Xiahou clan to give the Guanzhong torture room some pressure, a disciple of the Xiahou clan suddenly walked in and said, "Patriarch, the elders have invited you to a meeting." Xiahou Zhen thought of something, and his face suddenly darkened as he cursed in a low voice, "It's those old farts again." Chapter 367. There were countless large sects in the Jianghu, among which the 9 major families were the easiest to change. Sects relied on the inheritance of cultivation methods. Even if the people of the sect died, as long as someone obtained the cultivation method and was willing to rebuild the sect, the entire sect would not be destroyed. Compared to sects, families relied on bloodlines to pass down their inheritance. This kind of thing naturally had a certain disadvantage, and there were too many limitations. Therefore, the 9 major families in the Jianghu were now thinking of ways such as marriage alliances or changing the system to make themselves more powerful. At the same time, they would also make fewer mistakes. As one of the top 3 among the 9 major families, the Xiahou clan was already powerful enough. Therefore, what the Xiahou clan sought now was stability, which could be seen from the system of the Xiahou clan. In the Xiahou clan, except for the patriarch who had been in seclusion for a long time, even the patriarch could not make a decision. Although Xiahou Zhen was the patriarch, there were more than 10 elders above him. These elders might not be as powerful as Xiahou Zhen, but they were extremely experienced people in the Jianghu. These people did not have actual power, but they could stop what Xiahou wanted to do. The purpose was to keep Xiahou in check and balance as the patriarch, preventing him from doing things his own way and bringing the Xiahou clan into the abyss. Therefore, in the Xiahou clan, if Xiahou wanted to make some changes, he had to consider all aspects and convince all the elders. It could be said that being the patriarch of the Xiahou clan was not an ordinary kind of tiring. Although the rules of the Xiahou clan could prevent the patriarch from making any overly drastic decisions and bringing the Xiahou clan into the abyss, it also slowed down the development of the Xiahou clan and made the system a little overstaffed. At this time, more than 10 elders were sitting in the meeting hall of the Xiahou clan. They were all old, but their strength was not weak. Among these elders, the weakest had the cultivation of the oneness of heaven and man realm in the past, and the stronger ones were even martial Dao masters in the past. However, they were too old and had reached the limit of their lifespans. Even martial Dao masters did not have the chance to fight, so they gave up their power and cultivated in the clan in peace. Xiahou walked into the hall and sat on the main seat. He looked around and said indifferently, "Elders, why have you summoned me here?" The oldest among them, an old man with white hair and beard, who could barely keep his eyes open, said slowly, "I heard that you're going to use the power of the Xiahou family to suppress the Guanzhong torture room." The Xiahou clan was only so big. Before they came, Xiahou had already guessed what they wanted to do. Xiahou couldn't help but snort coldly, "So what? Great Elder, do you have any objections?" The Great Elder was of the same generation as the patriarch of the Xiahou clan. He was also a martial Dao master in the past, but the patriarch of the Xiahou clan in that generation was even more amazing and had been suppressing the Great Elder. As a result, the Great Elder never had a chance to stand out in the Xiahou clan, even when his lifespan was coming to an end. However, although the Great Elder was not good enough, he wanted to train his descendants to take the position of the patriarch. Unfortunately, none of his descendants were useful. After a few decades, he finally produced a talented descendant, but he happened to be of the same generation as Xiahou. He was directly suppressed by Xiahou and failed to compete for the position of the patriarch. Therefore, over the years, the Great Elder was the one who opposed Xiahou the most. Sometimes, Xiahou even wished that the old thing could die as soon as possible. His life was a waste of resources, and he could not bring any benefits to the Xiahou clan. The Great Elder said slowly, "Patriarch, you have to know that you are the patriarch of the entire Xiahou clan. Every move you make represents the overall interests of the Xiahou clan. I've heard about the matter. Xiahou Wujiang was too spoiled by you. He suffered losses in the Jianghu, but he didn't learn anything. It's only right that he lost to others. When I roamed the Jianghu in the past, I was defeated again and again, but I didn't go back to the clan to ask for reinforcements. Also, although someone died this time, it wasn't a member of the Xiahou clan. It was just a right-hand man. What are you so excited about? You're even going to use the power of the Xiahou clan to suppress the Guanzhong torture room. Is there any benefit in doing so?" Xiahou said coldly, "No benefit. Old 7 is a member of the Xiahou clan. If the Xiahou clan doesn't even fart after he died, wouldn't we be a laughing stock if the news got out?" The Great Elder still said slowly, "Patriarch, to put it bluntly, that dead right-hand man was just a dog raised by the Xiahou clan. If he let the dog bite someone, and the dog was killed, we could just raise another one. Why did we have to sacrifice him?" Xiahou slammed the table and shouted angrily, "Old 7 is my brother." The Great Elder put away his slow demeanor and stared at Xiahou. He said coldly, "Patriarch, don't forget what your surname is. He's just an outsider. The one who has the blood of the Xiahou clan in his veins is your clansman. Because of this matter, I feel that I've suffered a great loss even if I sacrifice the life of a collateral disciple of the Xiahou clan, not to mention that the Guanzhong torture room itself is not to be trifled with. You're the patriarch, so you naturally have to consider the interests of the Xiahou clan. If you're not considerate enough, then it's up to us old fogies to think for you. As long as we're here, you can't use any of your power. The lives of the Xiahou clan's cultivators are very precious and cannot be wasted on something so insignificant. The other elders echoed the great elder's words. Almost 90% of the people present would stand on the great elder's side, while the remaining 10% would remain neutral. These people weren't purposely making things difficult for Xiahou Zhen. They were merely acting out of interest. Although elders like them no longer held any real power, their children and descendants were still in the Xiahou clan. They naturally had to think about their children and descendants. Therefore, if Xiahou Zhen wanted to do anything, he would have to give their descendants a certain amount of benefit. Once they realized that Xiahou Zhen had too much power in his hands and wanted to stir up trouble, they would have to suppress Xiahou Zhen. Looking at these old fogies in front of him, Xiahou Zhen gnashed his teeth in hatred. He, this patriarch, was incomparably domineering in the eyes of other martial artists, but he himself only felt aggrieved, abnormally aggrieved. Xiahou Zhen stood up fiercely and said in a cold voice, "Fine, fine, fine. You all consider for the sake of the Xiahou clan's interests. But today, I'm only taking revenge for a personal grudge. I won't use the Xiahou clan's power. In a while, I'll personally go and find Guan Siyu to ask for the person." Finished talking, Xiahou Zhen flicked his sleeves and left. One of the elders moved in front of the great elder and asked rather worriedly, "Great elder, we refuted patriarch like that today. Nothing will happen, right?" The great elder said coolly, "What can happen? Xiahou Zhen isn't an idiot either. He won't go and fight to the death with Guan Siyu because of an outsider. He's currently in a fit of rage. At most, he'll just go to the Guanzhong torture room to vent his anger. Nothing will happen. This period of time, things have been going a little too smoothly for him. It's hard to avoid being inflated. We're also trying to calm him down and let him calm down. What's the role of us, these elders? Isn't it just to help correct patriarch when he goes astray? Honest advice is unpleasant to the ear. There's nothing we can do even if patriarch doesn't listen. Anyway, I'm doing this for his own good." Everyone present nodded in agreement. Just as Xiahou Zhen had decided to go to the Guanzhong torture room to find Guan Siyu to ask for the person, the news of Ming Chen's death reached the Great Light Temple. Furthermore, due to the long journey, they only received news of Ming Chen's death and not his corpse. In the Vajra yard, Ming Chen's master, Hui Zhen, was stunned when he heard the news of Ming Chen's death. There was no anger or grief in his eyes, only endless sorrow. Hui Zhen was an elder of the Vajra yard. His cultivation base had long reached the oneness of heaven and man realm. However, he was not young either. He was already more than 100 years old, and his qi and blood had begun to decline. Ming Chen was not his only disciple, but he was his favorite disciple. This was because Ming Chen was very similar to him when he was young. They were both righteous but impulsive and easily angered. However, after so many years, Hui Zhen's temper had changed a lot after he suffered a few losses in the early years. Finally, he was enlightened as he grew older. However, he also lost the chance to become a martial Dao master. Although Ming Chen was not considered young, he was in the prime of his life. He still had a chance. As long as he could completely change his temper and understand the true meaning of the Furious Vajra Heart Sutra, he might have a chance to step into the peak of martial Dao in the future. It was a pity that Ming Chen did not survive this calamity in the end. He did not actually die at the hands of Chu Xiu. Instead, he died at the hands of his uncontrollable anger. However, although Hui Zhen knew this, he still had to take revenge for Ming Chen. This had nothing to do with other messy things. It was only because he was Ming Chen's master. It was as simple as that. Hui Zhen was not Teacher Cien. He could let go of his hatred for the sake of benefits when his own disciple died. He did not hate Chu Xiu, but he still wanted to kill Chu Xiu to take revenge. However, Huizhen was not sure if he could kill Chu Xiu with his own strength. The Great Light Temple's martial artists had extremely strong bodies. However, when a martial artist who specialized in cultivating the body grew old, once his qi and blood began to deteriorate, his own strength would also deteriorate very seriously. Whether he could kill Chu Xiu, who had an extremely strong battle record, in a one-on-one battle was still an unknown. Moreover, Chu Xiu was a torture officer of the Guanzhong torture room. He was considered an important figure in the Guanzhong torture room. If Huizhen wanted to kill Chu Xiu, he would first have to go through Guanxiu. When one reached the level of a martial Dao master, it was no longer something that he could interfere with. Therefore, Huizhen left his own monastery and went directly to the Vajrayard's first seat, Skanda the Venerable, Su Yan. Su Yan was a generation older than Huizhen, but he was much younger than Huizhen. He was not even 100 years old. He looked like a tall, middle-aged monk with a masculine appearance. Chapter 368. The Great Light Temple had existed for tens of thousands of years and had existed even before the great calamity of ancient times. Thus, there were several generations of disciples in the Great Light Temple. However, because of this, there would be cases of 200- or 300-year-old monks accepting a young disciple. This disciple's seniority was naturally very high. Su Yan was in such a situation. Among the warriors of the Su generation, he was considered relatively young. Huizhen walked into the courtyard and clasped his hands together. Junior martial uncle. In the past, when Su Yan was young, Huizhen was already a martial monk instructor. However, because of seniority, he could only call Su Yan martial uncle. He felt that it was a little awkward, so he added the word junior. This habit had not been changed until now. Seeing Huizhen, Su Yan sighed. I know about Mingchen's matter. Huizhen, my condolences. Grief appeared in Huizhen's eyes as he nodded. However, before he could say anything, Su Yan said, Huizhen, do you want me to go to the Guanzhong torture room to ask for Mingchen? However, I advise you to give up. I will not make a move, and the temple will not allow you to make a move. The grudges between Mingchen and Chu Xiu have ended with Mingchen's death. This matter is over. Why? Huizhen had a look of surprise on his face. He had never thought that Su Yan would actually say that. The warriors of the Vajra institution had always had a fiery temper. In Huizhen's opinion, even if he did not take the initiative to mention this matter, Su Yan would personally go to the Guanzhong torture room to ask for an explanation from Guanxiu. In the end, Su Yan did not intend to make a move and even wanted to stop him. Su Yan sighed and said, it's news from the Guanzhong disciplinary hall. Senior martial brother Su Yun, the first seat of the Wangnian Zhen Hall, owed the previous hall master Chu Kuanga a favor. He did not return this favor when Chu Kuanga was alive. Now that the Guanzhong torture room wants him to return this favor, senior martial brother Su Yun has already agreed. You know the weight of senior martial brother Su Yun's words. Since he has spoken, I cannot refuse, and neither can you. Huizhen let out a sigh. His body, which was already old and clumsy, now appeared even more hunched. The first seat of the Raging Thought Zen Hall, Dragon Tree of Nine Wonders Su Yun, was the strongest existence amongst the first seats of the 3 great Zen halls and the 6 great martial schools of the Great Radiance Monastery. He was acknowledged to be a powerful being who was second only to the abbot, Reverend Sakya, Su Ci. Moreover, Su Yun had an extremely high status in the Su generation. He used to be their eldest senior brother. As for why Su Ci had become the abbot in the end, it had always been a mystery to the outside world. This was because among the warriors of the Su generation, whether it was in the martial arts world or in the Temple of Great Light, Su Yun was the most famous. In the end, Su Ci had become the abbot. However, the relationship between the two parties did not change because of this. In the past, when Su Ci had just taken over the Temple of Great Light, Su Yun had given his all to help Su Ci stabilize the hearts of the people in the Temple of Great Light. It could be said that Su Ci was able to secure his position now without Su Yun's help. In the Light Temple, Su Yun's words were no different from those of the abbot. Since Su Yun said that he was prepared to return this favor, Su Yan could not refute and Huizhen could not refuse. Looking at Huizhen's hunched back, Su Yan shook his head helplessly. He had to give Su Yun face, but this was also because Ming Chen's position and strength were not enough. Therefore, the Light Temple could not take revenge for him. If the person who died was the most outstanding disciple of their Great Light Temple's younger generation, Wisdom King Zongxian, then not only would Su Yun lose face, even if Abbot Su Ci did not want to take revenge, the entire Great Light Temple would still want to kill Chu Xiu to take revenge. The grudge with the Great Light Temple was temporarily put aside. Chu Xiu was currently recuperating in seclusion in the Guanxi land. Chu Xiu had also made use of the ferocious beast's heart he had obtained from the Skirich Tower. In fact, the best way to make use of the beast's heart was to bleed and refine it into a pill. Only then could the pill's effect be maximized. However, it was a pity that Chu Xiu did not have any alchemists under him, and he was a little worried about the alchemists in the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall. Hence, he could only waste some and directly extract their blood to refine. As soon as the blood from the beast's heart entered his body, it was split into half by the glazed gold silk goo in Chu Xiu's body. The other half was like a burning flame that instantly ignited Chu Xiu's body. The ancient beast's power was unimaginable to the current warriors. At least, the intensity of this power was unique among all the pills that Chu Xiu had taken. While he was refining the ferocious beast's blood, Chu Xiu had also borrowed this energy to temper his great King Kong divine energy, causing the strength of his body to rise to a whole new level. After a few days, the Ghost Hand King suddenly knocked on the door of Chu Xiu's seclusion chamber. He said that Cheng Zhouhai was looking for him and that it was urgent. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. The 4 regions of Guanzhong had their own way of doing things. Usually, they did not interfere with each other. If there was no incident that involved the entire Guanzhong torture room, they would rarely work together. Why was Cheng Zhouhai looking for him now? However, Chu Xiu was not in a life-or-death seclusion this time. His injuries were almost healed, and it was not a big deal to be interrupted. Therefore, Chu Xiu asked the Ghost Hand King to bring Cheng Zhouhai to the meeting hall. When Chu Xiu walked into the meeting hall, Cheng Zhouhai cupped his hands at Chu Xiu and said, "Congratulations to Official Chu for being promoted to the position of torture officer. I knew that Official Chu was not an ordinary person. Now, it seems that my judgment was very accurate." In the past, Cheng Zhouhai had a humorous personality and liked to joke around. However, his attitude towards Chu Xiu now was respectful. After all, his status was different. Now that Chu Xiu was a torture officer, he was on the same level as his master, Shao Yi. His attitude naturally could not be the same as before. Thinking of this, Cheng Zhouhai sighed. In the past, he and Chu Xiu were both outstanding warriors of the younger generation in Guanzhong torture room. They were all on the same level, but Chu Xiu's advantage was more obvious. As a result, after a short time, Chu Xiu had already stood at the same level as his master. This also made Cheng Zhouhai sigh in his heart. This was luck. Even if some people were stronger than Chu Xiu, they did not have the same status as Chu Xiu. "Brother Cheng, there is no need for these polite words between us. What is the matter this time?" Chu Xiu asked someone to bring a cup of tea to Cheng Zhouhai and asked. Cheng Zhouhai looked solemn and said, "My master asked me to bring you a message. Xiahou Zhen, the head of the Xiahou family, came from Eastern Qi and has already stepped into the Guangdong area. Looking at his appearance, it is obvious that he is coming straight for you, so you have to be careful." Chu Xiu was stunned and said in surprise, "Xiahou Zhen came alone?" Cheng Zhouhai nodded and said, "Only Xiahou Zhen came alone." Chu Xiu touched his chin and showed a trace of doubt in his eyes. The Xiahou family did not play by the rules. The great Guangming temple had been settled, and Chu Xiu also guessed the Xiahou family's reaction. Either it was left unsettled, like the last time. Anyway, the person who died was not Xiahou Wujiang. Or it was to mobilize the power of the entire Xiahou family to suppress the Guanzhong torture room, such as finding some trouble for the Guanzhong torture room and forcing the Guanzhong torture room to punish Chu Xiu. Now, as the head of the family, Xiahou Zhen personally took action. Did this mean that he valued Chu Xiu? However, for Xiahou Zhen himself, there was some suspicion of bullying the young, which was not good to say. Does the hall master know about this? Chu Xiu asked. Cheng Zhouhai nodded and said, the head of the Xiahou family came in person. As soon as he stepped into the Guangdong area, Master had already sent someone to inform the hall master. Chu Xiu smiled and said, since the hall master knows, I don't have to worry about anything. Chapter 369. In the Guanxi branch, Cheng Zhouhai did not leave. After knowing that Guan Siyu would definitely make a move, Cheng Zhouhai also wanted to see the power of the fight between the two martial Dao masters. Cheng Zhouhai had been in the Guanzhong torture room for more than 10 years. He had been taken into the Guanzhong torture room since he was a teenager, but he had never seen Guan Siyu make a move. This was because Guan Siyu had completely stabilized the Guanzhong torture room at that time. All these years, the Guanzhong torture room had been seeking stability, so Guan Siyu did not have the chance to make a move. Perhaps there were a few times, but Cheng Zhouhai did not see it. There was some criticism about Guan Siyu's strength in the pugilistic world. Most people thought that Guan Siyu was not worthy of his current ranking. In the past, the previous hall master, Chu Kuanga's strength was outstanding and he had countless achievements. He once stopped a war with his martial arts alone, which made the pugilistic world gasp in admiration. Therefore, Chu Kuanga was ranked second on the honor roll at his peak. However, when Guan Siyu took over the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Kuanga had already spread the reputation of the Guanzhong torture room throughout the pugilistic world. It was equivalent to him inheriting the legacy of the Guanzhong torture room, so his achievements naturally could not be compared to Chu Kuanga's. However, because of the reputation of the Guanzhong torture room, he was still ranked 8th on the honor roll. This ranking was also criticized by the pugilistic world. Most people thought that Guan Siyu's ranking was a little too high. Based on the few times he made a move, it was not amazing. How could he be ranked 8th on the honor roll? One had to know that the person ranked above Guan Siyu was the Great Light Temple's Wangnian Zen Hall Chief, Dragon Tree of Nine Wonders Master Su Yun. He was a dual cultivator of Zen and was known as the existence with the highest Zen cultivation in the Great Light Temple. At a certain stage, he was even more brilliant than Abbot Su Ci. The person ranked below Guan Siyu was the Blue Dragon Society, Great Dragon Head, Crescent Green Dragon Bu Tiannan. He was an extreme madman who had killed countless people in his life. From a low-level killer in the Blue Dragon Society, it took him decades to become the Great Dragon Head. It was rumored that ever since Bu Tiannan started killing people, he had never used assassination methods. He would just walk up to his target and tell them that he was going to kill them. He was extremely arrogant, but he had never failed. Therefore, it was rumored that when Bu Tiannan made his move, he would only kill those he did not want to kill, and there was no one he could not kill. If someone could pay the price, he would even dare to kill the abbot of the Great Light Temple or the heavenly master of Dragon Tiger Mountain. Sandwiched between the two of them, Guan Siyu's radiance was naturally very dim. The Jianghu people also had a lot of controversy about her. As a member of the Guanzhong torture room, Cheng Zhouhai naturally wanted Guan Siyu's strength to be as strong as possible. Unfortunately, there were too many rumors in the pugilistic world. In addition, Guan Siyu rarely fought. Even if he wanted to refute, he couldn't find a reason. Hence, Cheng Zhouhai also wanted to see how strong Hall Master Guan was. Just as Cheng Zhouhai was chatting with Chu Xiu in the Guanxi branch, an overwhelming pressure suddenly shrouded the entire Guanxi branch from the outside. It was as oppressive as a rainstorm, so much so that some people could not breathe. Chu Xiu and Cheng Zhouhai looked at each other. Both of their eyes revealed a hint of seriousness as they walked out together. At this time, at the entrance of the Guanxi branch, Xiahozhen stood with his hands behind his back. The aura around him affected heaven and earth, causing a layer of dark clouds to condense in the sky above the entire Guanxi branch. It looked extremely terrifying. Xiahozhen was alone, but his powerful aura was as terrifying as that of a powerful army. It made the people under Chu Xiu not dare to even move. This was the power of a martial Dao master. The power of a single person could fight against a powerful army. The realm of oneness of heaven and man only had a vague understanding of power and heaven and earth. On the other hand, a martial Dao master condensed the true martial core in his body and could truly affect the existence of heaven and earth. Cultivating martial arts, understanding heaven and earth. A martial Dao master could absorb the power of heaven and earth for their own use at any time. As long as the internal force did not erupt too fiercely, then a martial Dao master could absorb the power of heaven and earth unlimitedly and transform it into internal force to hurt people. Therefore, the saying that a martial Dao master could fight against a powerful army was not an exaggeration, but it really existed. A martial artist in the oneness of heaven and man realm could be killed by the number of people, but when it came to the existence of a martial Dao master, it could no longer be killed by the number of people. No matter how powerful your army was, even if no one was afraid of death, they would still be killed. This was why the real pellet state was called a martial Dao master. Only those who could establish a sect were qualified to be called a martial Dao master. Even if there was only one person in a sect, as long as he reached the martial Dao master realm, he was qualified to be a major sect in the underworld. In the eyes of the real major sects in the underworld, whether there was a martial Dao master in charge was a very obvious watershed. As for those martial arts forces without a martial Dao master in charge, in the eyes of the real major sects, they were just small fries. At this time, watching Chu Xiu walk out of the Guanxi branch, Xiahozhen looked at Chu Xiu without the slightest anger and hatred, only calmness. "You are Chu Xiu? You're younger than I expected." Xiahozhen, as his father, naturally knew Xiahou Wujiang's arrogance and pride. As a result, Xiahou Wujiang was defeated by this Chu Xiu again and again, and even seventh uncle was killed. Xiahozhen was really curious about Chu Xiu. At this time, facing a powerhouse of Xiahozhen's level, Cheng Zhouhai, who was next to Chu Xiu, already felt a little depressed under Xiahozhen's aura, but Chu Xiu was still able to remain calm. Hearing that, Chu Xiu merely said indifferently, "Patriarch Xiahou, you've exceeded my expectations. I didn't expect this matter to attract you to take action personally, Patriarch Xiahou. Do I, Chu Xiu, really have such great prestige that I can attract a martial Dao Grandmaster powerhouse to seek revenge on me? Isn't Patriarch Xiahou afraid of being said by the people in the underworld for bullying the weak?" Xiahozhen looked up at the sky, and he said calmly, "Seventh brother died in your hands, which is beyond my expectation. I have known seventh brother for more than 10 years. He is a very persistent guy. His master is a master from the Eastern Qi military who is proficient in spear skills and bow. But seventh brother said that he was born stupid, so he only specialized in one. If he didn't practice one to the acme of perfection, he would resolutely not practice the second. This made his master very helpless. Isn't such a person a little stupid?" Later, seventh brother's master was killed by the enemy, and he was also seriously injured and on the verge of death. I saw him on the road and threw him a bottle of medicinal pills. Seventh brother came back to life with this bottle of medicinal pills, took his revenge, and found out my identity. He went to the Xiahou clan to find me, saying that he would use his life to repay my kindness. I thought he was joking and just wanted to use this as an excuse to come to the Xiahou clan to earn a living as a follower, so I agreed. I didn't expect him to be serious. What seventh brother has done for me over the years is worth countless bottles of medicinal pills. He said he would use his life to repay my kindness, and he really put his life on the line. Now that seventh brother is dead, I'm not here as the patriarch of the Xiahou clan, but as an elder brother to seek justice from you. Chu Xiu sneered and said, Justice? It was your son who wanted to kill me. If I didn't kill him, I would be the one who died. Who would I seek justice from? Xiahou said expressionlessly, Seventh brother addressed me as patriarch and treated me like a father or brother. If I didn't come this time, not only would others be bitterly disappointed, but I would also not be able to get over this. At this moment, a powerful voice came from the side. Unfortunately, you came for nothing. Xiahou, you personally took part in a grudge between juniors. This is against the rules of the martial world. Guan Xiu walked over from the long street. Behind him was the third leader of the Criminal Apprehension Division, Si Ming, and over 10 experts from the division. Xiahou turned his gaze to Guan Xiu, but there was not a hint of emotion in his eyes. It would be strange if Guan Xiu didn't appear here. Xiahou hadn't interacted much with Guan Xiu. Although they were of the same generation, when Guan Xiu took over the Guanzhong torture room, Xiahou hadn't taken over the position of patriarch yet. Although they had met later on, they could only be considered acquaintances. Xiahou looked at Guan Xiu and said in a low voice, Hall Master Guan, I only want an explanation. It has nothing to do with seniority. Chu Xiu killed my men, so I want him to pay the price. This isn't too much, right? Guan Xiu said indifferently, It's already too much for you to come to the Guanzhong torture room to ask for someone. Since you didn't interfere in the matters between juniors, I naturally wouldn't interfere either. But now that you've personally taken action, as a hall master, I naturally won't sit by and watch someone take away my men from the Guanzhong torture room's territory. Xiahou, I know about the Xiahou family's situation. If you want to take revenge, you have to figure out the internal affairs of the Xiahou family first. Otherwise, it'll be very embarrassing for a dignified patriarch like you to always go into battle. Upon hearing Guan Xiu's words, Xiahou's expression turned gloomy. After all, the Xiahou family was one of the 9 great aristocratic families. With so many eyes in the underworld watching, some matters couldn't be hidden from others. The underworld had also heard about the *T internal affairs of the Xiahou family. Now that Guan Xiu saw Xiahou come alone, he understood what was going on. It was nothing more than internal strife in the family. Xiahou snorted coldly and said, Hall Master Guan, you don't have to worry about my Xiahou family's internal affairs. However, I have to give you a piece of advice. You helped Chu Xiu this time, but will you still be able to help him when he causes so much trouble in the future? Chu Xiu isn't a stable person. The Guanzhong torture room is too small. I'm afraid it won't be able to accommodate him. Guan Xiu, you helped Chu Xiu this time. Sooner or later, you will regret it. How could Guan Xiu be provoked by Xiahou's words? Taking a step forward, Guan Xiu's aura rose like a mountain. She said in a deep voice, No one can take away my men from my Guanzhong torture room. Xiahou, I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to retreat or not? Xiahou closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they had turned a deep golden color. The power of his essence soul had stirred up a yuan qi storm that swept over. Xiahou's actions had already explained everything. Chapter 370. After Xiahou clan's spirit commanding art was cultivated to its peak, it could be said to have a qualitative leap. The most direct observation was that it could evolve mental energy into spirit power, which could directly materialize. It could draw in the world and had infinite power. At this moment, Xiahozhen's spirit power shone brightly. The surrounding heaven and earth power was stirred by him into a storm that surged towards Guan Xiyu. In the early stages of Xiahou clan's spirit commanding art, it controlled people. It directly used mental energy to control the other party and the heaven and earth power. But at Xiahozhen's level, he was the one who controlled the world. The endless storm swept over hundreds of feet, and its power soared into the sky. A casual attack was dozens of times more terrifying than a unity of heaven and man realm warrior. At this moment, Guan Xiyu also moved. He took a step forward and formed a seal with both hands to lift the world. It was as if he was carrying a mountain and blasted it at Xiahozhen. In that instant, endless ripples appeared in midair and shattered in the face of the immense power. An invisible force swept through the world, but the power was tangible. It directly tore apart the powerful storm set off by Xiahozhen's spirit power. Divine Power 9 Transformations, Moving Mountain. The power of this attack was extremely shocking, but Guan Xiyu's figure did not stop. He pushed forward with one hand and seemed to stir casually. The surrounding heaven and earth essence energy rippled like flowing water and surged towards Xiahozhen. Wherever the ripples passed, the protruding stones on the ground were instantly turned to dust. One could imagine how terrifying this move was. This was one of Guan Xiyu's Divine Power 9 transformations, stirring the sea. In the past, when the younger generation competed for the God Weapon Convention in the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu had seen Yuqi attack. He had used the moving mountain and stirring the sea of the 9 transformations. However, the difference between Yuqi's use of these two moves and Guan Xiyu's was like heaven and earth. Only when Guan Xiyu used this move could he be considered to have some of the divine power's power. At this moment, Xiahozhen's expression changed slightly. Guan Xiyu's power was somewhat beyond his imagination. The 3 realms of spirit condensation were divided into 3 steps: martial Dao true pellet, real fire spirit refinement, and heaven and earth mystic. As long as one stepped into the 3 realms of spirit condensation, they could be called a martial Dao Grand Master. However, most martial Dao Grand Masters were in the first realm, and Xiahozhen was naturally the same. At this time, Xiahozhen could clearly feel that Guan Xiyu should be at the real pellet state, but his power seemed to be far beyond him. He had already reached the real spiritual spirit refinement. As soon as the sea stir was unleashed, the surrounding world seemed to become a prison of the sea. Worldly yuan qi and spiritual energy were stirred, forming an inescapable net that pressed down on Xiahozhen. Xiahozhen's body shone brightly, and the radiance of his primordial spirit shrouded his entire body. Then, an illusory figure appeared behind him, holding a giant bow. The golden radiance of the primordial spirit condensed into an arrow. It looked somewhat similar to the 7th uncle's 13 soul-stealing arrows. As the essence soul arrow in Xiahozhen's hand shot out, golden light instantly filled the world. It tore through Guan Xiyu's sea-stirring divine power and headed straight for her glabella. The power of the soul was powerful, and it was very difficult to block it with power of the same element. Either the attacker also cultivated a secret technique of the soul, or they could only choose to block it with their own vital energy. In short, although the Yuan spirit was difficult to cultivate, and it was a little extreme, its might was still extremely terrifying. Guan Xiyu's expression didn't change. He formed a seal with both hands and formed a very strange seal. He calmly said, "Exorcism." A faint light bloomed, and an extremely strange figure appeared behind Guan Xiyu. It had 3 faces and 6 arms, but it was extremely thin and small. Its aura was extremely strange, and it was condensed from the power of the soul and the power of the world. As soon as the figure appeared, Xiahozhen's primordial spirit arrow began to melt. It wasn't blocked, but it seemed as if it didn't exist at all. It directly melted into the world. Moreover, it wasn't just the primordial spirit arrow. Under the influence of the figure, the golden light of the primordial spirit around Xiahou began to rapidly collapse. The figure actually had a great suppressive effect on the power of the soul. It was simply the nemesis of the Xiahou clan's spirit control technique. Moreover, it wasn't over yet. Guan Xiyu waved his hand. He didn't have a saber in his hand, but a piercingly cold saber gleam appeared around him. The dense saber gleam floated around Guan Xiyu like a tornado. As Guan Xiyu took a step forward, the saber gleam surged towards Xiahou. Within a radius of 300 meters, everything was enveloped by the boundless saber storm. The scene was simply terrifying. Divine Power 9 Transformations, Call the Wind. This series of exchanges made Chu Xiu, Cheng Zhouhai, and the others below dizzy. It wasn't easy to learn from a battle between two martial Dao masters. However, they could also see that Guan Xiyu had the upper hand. To be precise, Guan Xiyu's strength couldn't even be considered to have the upper hand. It was simply a crushing defeat. Moreover, Guan Xiyu's cultivation technique also had a great restraining effect on Xiahou. Guan Xiyu's secret cultivation technique, Divine Power 9 Transformations, wasn't passed down from ancient times. Instead, Guan Xiyu had researched it on his own. His Divine Power 9 transformations contained the foundations of countless cultivation techniques. Among them, there were even fragments of powerful ancient cultivation techniques. Guan Xiyu forcibly combined them together and extracted their advantages. That was why it only had 9 forms, but it included all kinds of martial arts in the world. It could also restrain any martial arts technique. Its power was unpredictable and extremely powerful. Under the blade storm, Xiahou's eyes flashed with a cold glint. He shouted, and the golden spirit aura around his body turned into sharp blades. His aura soared into the sky, wanting to tear everything in front of him apart. The Xiahou clan's spirit-driving art was good at offense, not passive defense. In front of Guan Xiyu, his spirit-driving art hadn't been able to exert its power. If Guan Xiyu continued to suppress him, Xiahou couldn't imagine the consequences. However, at this moment, Guan Xiyu's figure suddenly appeared behind Xiahou. She formed a fist seal and slammed it down on Xiahou. It was still moving mountain. No one noticed when Guan Xiyu had changed his figure. Even Chu Xiu and the others, who had been watching Guan Xiyu fight in the outside world, didn't notice. A powerful force descended from all directions. Xiahou twisted the sharp primordial spirit blade in his hand, but it was already too late. The power of moving mountain descended like Mount Tai pressing down on him. Moreover, this move seemed to carry the power of the gods, causing the primordial spirit blade in Xiahou's hand to shatter with a loud bang. A huge wave of primordial spirit power mixed with Gang Qi erupted. Xiahou formed a seal with his hand, and the power of his soul drew upon the power of the world, condensing it into a shield in front of him. Unfortunately, the defensive power of the spirit-controlling art was somewhat lacking. With a loud bang, Xiahou's Yuan Qi shield shattered, and he was sent flying more than 30 meters away. His face was frighteningly pale. Xiahou stood where he was, and his pale face was slightly red. Anyone could see that Xiahou's internal organs had been injured, but he forced himself to not vomit blood. Xiahou stared at Guan Xiyu. After a while, he said, "Guan Xiyu, I underestimated you. Most people in Jianghu also underestimated you. If Chu Kuanga's brilliance did not cover you, you would have shone even brighter after taking charge of the Guanzhong torture room." Guan Xiyu said expressionlessly, "The history of the Guanzhong torture room is very short compared to the large sects and families that have been passed down for thousands of years. Every generation of the Guanzhong torture room is a pioneer. Chu Kuanga and the other ancestors used their lives to open up the position of the Guanzhong torture room. Their brilliance will not stop me from shining. Instead, it will protect the Guanzhong torture room to move forward safely." The corners of Xiahou's mouth twitched, and he turned to leave. This time, he had suffered a loss, and he had miscalculated. Xiahou came to Guanzhong alone to demand an explanation. In fact, he did not think that he could take away Chu Xiu from the Guanzhong torture room by himself, or do something to Chu Xiu. However, if he fought Guan Xiu in front of everyone, as long as he gained the upper hand, he would be able to leave calmly. He would be able to give Old Seven and his subordinates an explanation. He would also be able to let everyone see that he, Xiahou, was a responsible family head. In the end, Xiahou did not expect that Guan Xiu, who had always been very low-key and was thought by the people of the Jianghu to be unworthy of his ranking on the honor list, was so powerful. His cultivation was probably not far from the true fire spirit refinement stage. He had only seen 4 of Guan Xiu's 9 divine transformations, and he could not resist it. The difference between the two could be described as crushing. At this time, on Chu Xiu's side, Cheng Zhouhai and the others were also very excited when they saw Guan Xiu seriously injure Xiahou in a few moves. Since their hall master was so powerful, they naturally felt honored as well. However, Chu Xiu was also narrowing his eyes at this time. He was thinking about something different. The others were thinking that they had underestimated Guan Xiu, but Chu Xiu was thinking about how strong Mei Qinglian was. Chu Xiu did not understand the darkness demon sect's cultivation method, but Mei Qinglian had been hiding beside Guan Xiu for so many years and could even faintly control her mind. One could imagine how strong Mei Qinglian was. The stronger one was, the stronger their mind was, especially people like Guan Xiu, who was known as the Iron Judge. For the sake of the Guanzhong torture room's rules, she would even cripple her own disciple. However, Mei Qinglian had been by Guan Xiu's side all these years. He did not know what methods she had used, but she could already influence most of Guan Xiu's decisions. This was shocking enough. Now, Chu Xiu was also a little curious about what Mei Qinglian wanted to do. If she just wanted to use the Guanzhong torture room to hide her identity, then Mei Qinglian had already done it. She dared to reveal her martial Dao master cultivation in the Guanzhong torture room headquarters, which was enough to prove her influence on Guan Xiu. In the end, Mei Qinglian was still secretly plotting something. Could it be that she wanted Guan Xiu, a martial Dao master, to become her puppet? Chapter 371. After repelling Xiahou, Guan Xiu turned her gaze to Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu hurriedly stood up and cupped his hands. "Many thanks for helping me, Hall Master." Guan Xiu nodded and said faintly, "The Guanzhong torture room has helped you deal with this matter. Next time, think twice before you act." Although the Guanzhong torture room has stabilized, it hasn't reached the point where we can expand at will. After reminding Chu Xiu, Guan Xiu directly left with her people. After nightfall, Chu Xiu didn't go to sleep, nor did he choose to cultivate. Instead, he waited in the room. Since Guan Xiu had come, then Mei Qinglian should have also come. He still remembered that Mei Qinglian had said that she had something for him to do. Sure enough, not long after, Mei Qinglian's figure walked out of the black mist. She had a lazy smile on her face. "The trouble has been resolved. You can relax now." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It wasn't a big trouble, but this time, I really didn't expect Hall Master Guan's strength to be this strong." Mei Qinglian glanced at Chu Xiu and said, "What else do you think? If Guan Xiu was really mediocre, do you think Chu Kuanga would have stood his ground and helped him become the new Hall Master before he died?" Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Saintess, you can play Guan Xiu in the palm of your hand. Your strength is even more terrifying than Guan Xiu's." Mei Qinglian tidied up the hair in front of her eyebrows and snorted, "There's no need to probe. My demon sect's martial artists are good in this aspect. If I were stronger than Guan Xiu in a head-on fight, why would I need to hide by his side? By the way, you haven't forgotten what I told you last time, right?" Chu Xiu said, "Of course I haven't forgotten. Saintess, please tell me if you have any instructions." Mei Qinglian said, "Don't worry, what I want you to do will be good for you. It will help you make a name for yourself in the demonic path. Have you heard of the World Sword Sect Conference?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "I've naturally heard of this. The Centennial Grand Meeting is a grand occasion for sword cultivators in the Jianghu. But what does this have to do with my demonic path?" The so-called World Sword Sect Meeting was a grand ceremony of sword principle held by the 5 major sword sects. Whether it was the 5 major sword sects or the numerous rogue cultivators in the Jianghu who used swords, they could all participate in it. They could compete in swordsmanship, discuss Dao, and learn from each other. Moreover, they would also give out some rewards to the most outstanding young sword principle experts in the meeting. As for the World Sword Sect Meeting, Chu Xiu vaguely remembered that in the original plot, the scale seemed to be quite large. However, because only swordsmen participated, other than the 5 major sword sects and some warriors who used swords, very few people paid attention to this matter. Mei Qinglian sneered and said, "Originally, it had nothing to do with it. The 5 major sword sects closed their doors and played internally. We demonic path people are not that bored, so naturally, we won't interfere. But this time, the 5 major sword sects insisted on making a big move. This time, not only sword cultivators can participate in the World Sword Sect Meeting, but the warriors and elites of other sects can also participate. The most important thing is the reward. In the past World Sword Sect Meeting, there were almost only 2 rewards. One was the world-famous sword, and the other was a very high-grade sword manual. And this time, because they invited other people, there were a few more rewards. One of them was the ancient demonic path's secret treasure, the damaged heavenly demon creation flag. You should know what the good fortune heavenly devil flag means to us demonic cultivators. Those swordsmen's actions are simply a slap to the face of our demonic cultivators. If our demonic cultivators were to swallow this insult, that would be the biggest joke in the world. So this time, we demonic path people, whether it's the bright devil or the hidden devil lineage, have decided to put aside our prejudices and join forces to do something big. When Chu Xiu heard this, he raised his eyebrows. If that was the case, then the one who took the initiative to cause trouble this time was really not the demonic path. Chu Xiu knew about the reputation of the heavenly demon creation flag. This thing actually had nothing to do with the Kunlun devil cult. It was the symbol of the entire demonic path. According to legend, after the great calamity of ancient times, the Daoist and Buddhist lineages had actually left behind a very comprehensive inheritance. However, the demonic path was relatively loose, and the entire thing was fragmented. Later, someone found the ancient demonic path's ancestral land in the ruins. From there, they found many powerful demonic path cultivation methods. Only then did the demonic path recover its former glory. The heavenly demon creation flag was found in the ancient demonic path's ancestral land. It was the symbol of the ancient demonic path's ancestral land. A large flag was a formation, and cultivating demonic techniques under the flag would yield twice the results with half the effort. Moreover, in the era after the Great Calamity, the demonic path's inheritance was almost severed. The heavenly demon creation flag was the symbol of the orthodox demonic path. Countless demonic path sects had obtained it before. Almost all the demonic path sects who had once held onto the heavenly demon creation flag claimed that they were the orthodox demonic path. However, none of the sects had kept the flag for too long. So, in general, the heavenly demon creation flag's status was similar to the dynasty's imperial jade seal. Although it did not have much use, its symbolic meaning was great. At that time, let alone provoking us, these righteous sects could only shout the slogan of exterminating demons and defending the Tao carefully in private. How could they be as sullen as they are now? This is an overt plot. If we don't go, the demonic path's reputation will fall and we will be trampled underfoot again. If we go, it will be exactly what the 5 great sword sects want. Anyway, our demonic path will suffer. Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, in the end, our demonic path also chose to go, didn't it? Mei Qinglian snorted coldly and said, the Kunlun devil cult is gone, but the other demonic path sects are still there. When it comes to our demonic path, how can we retreat? Don't the 5 great sword sects want to see the strength of our demonic path? Then this time, we will let them see just how much strength our devil Dao has left. Without the Kunlun devil cult, once our bright demon and hidden demon join forces, even if we are not as good as the Daoist and Buddhist lineages, ordinary people will not be able to humiliate us. Chu Xiu asked doubtfully, by the way, what are bright demon and hidden demon? Mei Qinglian pointed at Chu Xiu and then pointed at herself and said, you and I belong to the hidden demon lineage. The mark of the Kunlun devil cult on us is too strong. We belong to the kind of people that the righteous path sects must kill. We have to hide in the dark, so we are called hidden demon. The people of the phaseless demon sect also belong to the hidden demon lineage. As for the bright demon lineage, they are sects like the Northern Plains Evil Pole sect and the Miaojiang moon-worshipping cult. When the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, they had nothing to do with the Kunlun devil cult, so they could walk in the Jianghu aboveboard and not be chased by the righteous path sections. Previously, the hidden demon lineage had a lot of complaints about the bright demon lineage, thinking that they had betrayed the demonic path, so the two sides could be said to be incompatible like fire and water. But now, because the 5 sword sects were provoking the entire demonic path, the two lineages of demonic path temporarily put down their prejudice and prepared to join forces this time. I'm the only one left of my shadow demon sect, but as you can see, I can't leave Guangzhong, so you will represent my shadow demon sect to participate in this demonic path conference. When the time comes, as the representative of my shadow demon sect, no matter how much effort you put in, you will get a share of the profits after the conference. It can also increase your prestige in the demonic path. Anyway, this is a good job. Chu Xiu nodded and asked, when is the World Sword Sect Conference? Where is it? Mei Qinglian said, 2 months later, West Chu's Floating Jade Mountain. But you have to go to the Bone Tree Villa next to Floating Jade Mountain in a month to participate in the Demonic Path Conference. At this time, Chu Xiu's expression did not change, but his heart was in turmoil. He finally remembered what had happened. In the original plot, this was not called the World Sword Sect Conference, but the famous Righteous Path and Demonic Path Conference on Floating Jade Mountain. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.